Do you actually have to be on cocaine to be on this podcast?
It's a great day to be a Wildcat!
Surfing.
What is up, everybody? You're listening to yet another edition of Cocaine Willie, the official K-State representative on the College Huddle. I am your commissioner, Bob Trollsby, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host, the good chef Andre Napier. But unfortunately, we're one man down tonight with Fireball Matt Marchesini being north of the border for work. So just a quick boo all around for Fireball Matt not being on here. But to make up for that, we are joined by none other than Trevor from Saturday's Warrior, the College Huddle representative for the BYU Cougars, as both teams open up Big 12 play in earnest. Trevor, how are you doing tonight?
Doing great. Thanks, guys, for having me.
When you started to do BYU podcasting, did you ever think you'd be on a podcast with cocaine in the title?
I was going to say no. Actually, I usually have drugs that are a little bit on the softer side. I don't know if you ever watched, there was like a Netflix documentary that came out about Mitt Romney after his election, right?
Yes, and I did.
He was back one night after campaigning, and he's like stressed out, and he pours himself a bowl of cereal. It's like Cocoa Krispies or something, and he's eating that. He's just like, oh, and I was like, that is so on brand, because that is exactly what I would do, is go back a big bowl of cereal and just like stress eat. But anyway, no, I did not. So thank you so much for opening my eyes to all the possibilities that are out there.
Absolutely. But before we get into the show, this show is brought to you by our two sponsors, Annie Mae's Parlor and Pat's Beef Jerky. To start it off, Annie Mae's Parlor is located at 616 North 12th Street in the heart of Aggieville in Manhattan, Kansas. Annie Mae's has been in business for 50 years, as you can see from my koozie right here, and is an absolute must-visit destination in Aggieville on game days and school nights alike. It is also where I had my first legal alcoholic beverage back in 2013. Not exactly appealing to the BYU fans who may be listening to this necessarily, but Annie Mae's has more to offer than just craft cocktails, draft beers, and all of that other good stuff. They do have events like live music, comedy, and all sorts of other stuff, fundraisers, tons of fun stuff that they do there. Every single week, they've got at least 2 or 3 events every single week. So definitely check out those events at www.antimaze.com to get a list of those upcoming events. And go visit your auntie and MHK there again at 616 North 12th Street in the heart of Aggieville. And be sure to tell them Cocaine Willie sent you. The show is also brought to you by Pat's Beef Jerky, located at 401 Main Street in Liebenthal, Kansas, as you can see from this label right here. Pat's has been serving up the finest beef jerky in the Midwest for 34 years running, and they feature mouth-watering flavors like the classic beef jerky, teriyaki beef jerky, and my personal favorite, the savory beef pepper sticks. There are 3 places where you can get yourself some Pat's Beef Jerky. You can pick it up in person at either the Fridge Liquor Store in Manhattan or at their original store at 401 Main Street in Liebenthal, Kansas. Last but not least, you can also get Pat's Beef Jerky online at www.patsbeefjerky.com. They have shipped to all 50 states this year. So if you are a BYU fan listening to this and you like beef jerky, Old Trapper, no free ads. They are the sponsor of the Big 12, but the real sponsor of the Big 12 should be Pat's Beef Jerky. They have shipped to all 50 states. And if you use the promo code USA, you will receive free shipping on your next order. Furthermore, the promo code CATS, if you have not used the promo code CATS at checkout, that is also still active. So if you use that promo code, you'll get 10% off your next order. So go use the promo code CATS at checkout for 10% off. Use code USA at checkout for free shipping, and visit patsbeefjerky.com to place your order today. Trevor, again, thank you a ton for joining the show tonight. Before we get into the preview, we always like to ask our guests at the very beginning of the show, just tell us a little bit more about you. What's your history with BYU? What's your history with covering the team? Have you been a fan your whole life? Just tell us your story of your relationship with BYU athletics and how you got into doing the podcast covering the Cougars.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you. First of all, I got to say I've watched some of your guys' show, and it's a great show. So I'm really excited to be on it. You guys do a great job. Um, I, yeah, I've been a BYU fan as long as I can live. So my my mom went to BYU, but my dad is a Ute, and somehow growing up, I have no idea. I don't. I think maybe he just didn't want to push it on us or whatever. My older brother was attached to BYU, and I think I just looked up to my older brother. Not that I didn't look up to my dad, but I think when you go through that age, that so when I started kind of becoming aware, and he was a bit older than me, he was really into BYU, and I think I just kind of adopted that. I don't remember at any point ever crossing my mind that I might be a Utah fan. So, it's just I guess genetics, and I lucked out. So, but yeah, so I went to BYU, but I started actually on YouTube with a neighbor of mine. We were outside, and kids playing in the yard, whatever, and we'd just be chatting all the time. So we're like, hey, let's start sports YouTube, and we'll just talk about it there. And the original focus was actually really talking about jerseys and things like that, because we were always talking about that. We love it. Which, by the way, this is a primo uniform matchup we have this weekend. I love K-State's uniforms. I was really stoked about the K-State Tulane matchup earlier this season. So, but anyway, so I still like to do videos on that stuff, and I was doing it for a while, but it was really hard for the two of us to coordinate. So eventually I just kind of dropped, and I was like, I just want to be talking about BYU. I was finding ways to bring up BYU onto my show. Didn't really make a match. So I just pivoted completely, and I was like, I'm going to lean into BYU because this is what I want to talk about. And so, and I've been doing that since, and enjoying it. And then the opportunity to join the College Huddle came along, and I was really excited about that because I love doing collaborations like this, being able to, chat with other channels like you guys and kind of mix it up. So again, thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. And real quick, I do have a quick question around the Big 12. So as a newer member of the Big 12, what has that transition been like for BYU fans? And I guess maybe furthermore, knowing that Utah is in the conference now, having that Holy War rivalry as a conference game for the first time in a couple decades at least. Just what's that transition been like, and tell us a little bit more about maybe the mindset of BYU fans coming into the Big 12.
Well, we're not really surprised that Utah would want to follow us to the Big 12. No, I kid. But yeah, so I think generally speaking, BYU fans are really excited. It was weird during independence when you didn't even have our independence area, when we didn't have that Holy War every year. And when we did, it was like usually at the beginning of the season. We even played at a bowl game one year, and which was wild. They thought they avoided us that year, and then we ended up playing them anyway. And so, but having it in conference, I think it just means more. It's exciting. It is kind of weird that it's still not on that last weekend of the season, the Thanksgiving, but I think the way it's set up, both teams will be coming off of a bye week, and I'm not located in Utah. And so I'm sure being there in the thick of it, it just escalates everything. And, Utah can't kind of poo-poo it or say like little brother. Well, I mean, they can't, but we're in the same conference. We're the playing field is now evening out, and it should be a good one. So I don't know. Utah fans kind of you get two reactions. Some are the same. They're very excited about again having it in conference, the understanding the history and everything that it means. But others are still trying to kind of play it kind of like they're too cool. But again, that's why nobody in the Big 12 likes Utah fans.
That could be very true. I mean, that might be the consensus. I want to get, the big picture stuff for BYU here in a second, but you brought up a point just a second ago that really sparked my interest about the jersey thing. And I think it's kind of cool with this matchup. K-State might be wearing purple on a road visit for the first time, maybe ever in K-State history. You guys are wearing white at home during a whiteout. Explain, and what do you think of this this scenario that we're going through for this game versus BYU and K-State?
So I do have to say, I think it's a very cool alternate uniform, doing this kind of 90s throwback with the drop shadows, which is really cool, which they brought back because they're celebrating the 100th year of football. So not since we started, because there were years that were taken off, like because of World War II and whatnot, but of actual seasons played. And so they wanted to honor that with a throwback uniform. This is one that fans have been clamoring for a long time. Now, I wouldn't want this to be our regular. I love our traditional look, but having it in the mix, I think, is really cool. And then when you have Kansas State, which is from an iconic game that we played in the 90s while wearing this uniform, I think they just thought, how do we not wear this uniform on that night? And it's going to be our Big 12 home opener. I kind of feel like we're kind of asking for it when we wear this in this game. It's kind of almost asking for, inviting bad karma, wearing it, but no, it should be a lot of fun. And actually, it wasn't the whole whiteout wasn't really a uniform that they wore very often. They generally had the either blue pants or blue jersey, so mixed. So it's not. I did see a picture today that I guess they did at one point wear a full whiteout in these 90s uniforms. So it's not the first time, but it's not like a true original. But yeah, there he is, Steve Sarkisian.
Look at that guy.
You guys remember him, right? So
yeah, I remember him more as a coach. He could probably sling the ball around a little bit too, but so yeah, let me get to full picture of BYU right now. You guys went 5-7 last year. You started 3-0 last year. Very solid 3-0. You're 3-0 now. Kalani Sitake, you guys he's been the coach that seems like forever, but I mean, obviously not that long. But where is the temperature with the program? How is this 3-0 a little different than last year? And is there any prove it to this year for Kalani Sitake?
I'll answer that last question first. Absolutely, he needs to prove it. I don't think he's really on the hot seat, but his seat is warming up. And I think it has more to do with probably boosters getting a little impatient than it does necessarily Tom Holmoe, the athletic director. And so, because overall BYU's had pretty good performance. And the general consensus has been, if BYU makes a bowl game this year, that, that kind of relieves a lot of pressure for him. But Aaron Roderick, the offensive coordinator, he is definitely on the hot seat. And if BYU does not improve things this season, then he most certainly, BYU will part ways with him. And so, so I'm trying to think back. So yeah, as opposed to last year. So last year, those wins at the beginning of the year, we started out 3-0. We were even 5-2 at one point. It looked like, okay, we just got to pull out one more to make it to a bowl game, which is what we were hoping for, obviously. So this year, there were warning signs from the beginning. The very first game we played against Sam Houston State, who is a good team, but is their first year in the FBS, and we struggled to score against them. And, and then we played Arkansas, and that game was wild. It was a lot of fun, but it was very, what people like to say, opportunistic in terms of turnovers and other things, that it didn't look like a sustainable approach to winning football games. That it went our way that time, but and just overall, it feels like this team has a lot more cohesion than last year. The offensive line, well, I can go in by position, but there's just a lot of signs that the team has improved in a lot of ways. Now, some of those cracks, I guess, in the team, I think, are still there, and there's a lot of angst from it that hold over from last season. But I think they're there, but there's improvement. And so, BYU fans definitely, obviously, coming into the season expecting improvement upon last season, expecting to get to a bowl game. If we don't, I think there will definitely be some turnover in the coaching staff, but I think overall we've seen things show that the team has a little bit more of a sustainable approach to hopefully making it through what is a much more difficult schedule. I mean, we have all 5 of the the Big 12 preseason top 25 teams on our schedule. And, it's not a walk in the park by any means. And so to get to 6, it's going to be difficult, especially when we have ASU, who is one of our gimmies, who now is looking pretty good themselves. So, but I think the expectations are still there. And a lot of fans are still saying, no, it's 6 isn't enough. We want to get to 7, 8. And I was like, let's just get to a bowl game and I'll be happy.
You mentioned ASU too. Cam Scatterboom may be my favorite running back in the Big 12, not named DJ Giddens. I just got to throw that out there. But let's dig into the offense. So I want to chat a little bit about Kalani Sitake in the regard of he has an interesting history. He's been a positional coach or coordinator on both sides of the ball, both on offense and defense. And he came when he played at BYU was a fullback. So he has knowledge of both the offensive side of the ball and the defensive side of the ball, which I think would bode well to someone who's in a head coaching position more than likely, but primarily has had some history on the defensive side of the ball from a coaching standpoint. But I'm curious, how does his knowledge of both sides of the ball help him or hurt him potentially? Because I'm asking you because I don't know. And schematically on offense, how would you describe this 2024 BYU team? Also knowing that you've shared that maybe the fan base is a bit disgruntled with some of the play calling, but perhaps the offensive coordinator situation.
Yeah, I would say Sitake, even though he does have experience on both sides, I think he is much more of a defensive-minded coach. So, like when our defensive coordinator Jay Hill, he missed the game opener because he had a heart attack 2 days before. He showed up at the game anyway. He was up in the box, but he wasn't, calling plays. Sitake took over that, and so. I think he's very comfortable with that. And obviously as the head coach, he's very ingrained. I think they're all on the same page, but also from my understanding is that he is more of a, I'm the CEO, and then he lets his people do their thing and he turns it over to them. I don't know how hands-on he is with the approach in terms of setting up the offensive scheme or the defensive scheme for that matter. But he definitely is one that allows his coordinators to have a big influence on that. And so the offense we see is definitely A-Rod's and we see his fingerprints all over it. And that's where a lot of the angst is. And so, and he's a lot of the reason that you have BYU fans, I think, on edge or yelling at their screen most weeks is because of his play calling. And so it seems like he's slow to adjust to other teams. He is really committed to establishing the run to open up the pass, but we are really deep at wide receiver. We're already, I don't feel like, running back was already one of the position groups I was worried about before the season. And now we've lost our top 2 running backs in the depth chart. And so last week against Wyoming, he showed a willingness to adapt and really leaned into the pass game and really leaned into, hey, we've got receivers, we got guys that can go out there and get the ball. And so, let them cook. And it was, and it worked. Granted, we were going up against Wyoming, but never truly opened up the run game completely. But like I said, we're down the depth chart there. And so I would expect during against Kansas State, we would see something similar, although I wouldn't be surprised to see new wrinkles thrown in there. He's the one that loves to have a trick play or two up his sleeve. And he's, you'll see some that are, okay, yeah, I've seen that before, but there's always new wrinkles to it. And so to catch people off guard. And one thing I've noticed with him, I feel like he has like this long con. He's like, through 3 quarters, I'm going to run this. And every time we're going to go this way. And then in the 4th quarter, just randomly, they'll pull out and it'll be a trick play. Everyone will bite. And then it'll just open up something for a big gain. And so he's really committed to, we're going to get them to bite so hard on this when we finally do pull it. So, but yeah, so it'll be interesting to see what other adjustments he has this week because the run game has still struggled a bit. And like I said, we've got a lot of depth at wide receiver and with our tight ends as well. So I think there's lots of options to air it out. then that just means we have to, we're going to leave it in the hands of our quarterback, who is a little turnover prone. And so now, you kind of weigh those, like, hey, the odds and the percentages of, hey, we can get these big chunk plays, through the air, but also there's always a chance that, like, it just gets tossed up and it's up for grabs. And so it feels like a risk every time he throws it.
And we're going to be talking about that guy right now, and his name is Jake Retzlaff. Am I saying that right? My guy, he's putting it all out there. We'll say that. We'll say that at the best. He's coming into week 4, 841 yards passing. That's pretty respectable numbers. I mean, he's slinging the ball around. 7 TDs, 3 interceptions. I think last week, this past week, he had the highest QBR of any quarterback in the Big 12 for that week. Mm-hmm. So he's doing the thing, and he's also the leading rusher for you guys. Obviously, you just went on to say about the injuries at the running back position, but what is he doing, and we saw a little bit of him last year. What has he done to grow into the position and evolve more as this dual threat quarterback? And what's the confidence level with him, his backup, and what's the fan base's, temperature on him? I'm real temperature guy this week.
Boy, the temperature on him it's like split down the middle. It feels like, with the fan base. Some are hot and some are very cold. Yeah. All of us, I think, are even the people that are in Jake's corner are all realist about, okay, he has some flaws, but those flaws are the same thing that make him good. Is he's a gamer. He's going to go out there and play, and he is always going to try to win it. The problem is sometimes he tries to do a little too much at once, and that's when you see some of those issues. He didn't have a fumble last week, so we're hoping that, especially with him running it more, that's something that I'm sure the coaching staff has him really focused on. And then it's just those interceptions. A couple of them were a little bit fluky. A lot of some of his interceptions, it's from when they're bad decisions. Last week he threw one, but it was really just underthrown. So it's like, okay, that's not great, but at least it wasn't from him just doing something really boneheaded, which he had, one of those against SMU. And so you like to see that, okay, there's progress there. But you mentioned Jake Retzlaff in the run game, and that was something that they brought in the game against SMU. It wasn't until like the third quarter, but again, our running backs had been injured, and we were really trying to open things up. And all of a sudden, they started letting, some were designed QB runs, other ones were, it was a kind of an option play, and he does really well with that. And like you've seen, he's been able to pick up a lot of yardage. Now, being the leading rusher, a little bit to do that with not having a lot of consistency at running back, but also because those plays have been very effective in opening things up when our traditional run game hasn't. And so, so I expect to see a lot more of that. And that's something that he brings. A lot of people that are calling for Jake, or for Gary Bohannan to become the starter, is that Jake does get a little bit, it seems like he gets a little bit sped up when he's in the pocket. And for as much as he runs, he actually does really well in the pocket. He also throws well on the run. He has kind of interesting mechanics. A lot of people talk kind of the sidearm approach, and that might be, why he had some turnovers. But man, he just throws bullets, like these darts that are out there. And so he makes some plays that are just incredible. But people that are out on him, that don't trust him not to turn over the ball, they want to see Gary Bohannan. You realize that you're giving up something in a little bit in the passing game, that he probably doesn't have quite the touch that Jake has to make some of the more nuanced throws. But he's a big guy. We know he can run, and we know that he'll take care of the ball, that he's out there. He's a proven commodity, even if he's more of a kind of a game manager. So in some ways he's the safer pick, but I think Jake brings the higher upside.
And has more of a future in front of him as well at the same time. So
absolutely.
Bohannon's a little bit played out at this point. He's on his third school now, right, at this point?
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm all for Bohannan. Like, he came to BYU because he was willing to take a chance on himself, and it was a really tight QB battle all through camp, and it went back and forth, and ultimately Jake got it, and I think it's partially that back and forth, and that QB battle is partially to blame for why the fan base is so divided now, because they let it drag out so long that it took them so long to kind of say, hey, this is our guy. This is who we believe in. And so naturally fans are a little bit iffy and say, oh, if it's that close, let's get the other guy in. If he's not, we're still having flashbacks to, I don't know if you guys have seen it. We've all seen it way too often, but against Oklahoma, we were really in that game. It looked like we could win. We just drove down the field, and then he passes it and it gets intercepted in the end zone and goes all the way. And so it still hurts. We win that game, we'd be talking about going bowling in our first year in the Big 12, and the narrative's completely different. But I think a lot of people are still having some PTSD from that, and so every time Jake messes up, there's a lot of angst from that. And so, but yeah, it's I see both sides of the argument, but at this point, I think they're saying, hey, Jake brings higher upside. Also, like you said, investment into the future. Like, Gary's gone at the end of this year. Say he's gone and then Jake's not happy, whatever, he leaves, or, can we really run out Jake next year? How does that work? And so I think that they're sticking with him for that reason. Plus, if you put Gary out there and then the offense still struggles, then what do you do? It's like, well, you can't. How do you put Jake out there who with maybe his confidence is shattered? And really that's what gets him in trouble, but it's also what kind of makes him who he is that he can kind of play with that feeling like he can do anything.
I gotta ask you this, and I want you to put a wet blanket on this fire that I've been hearing on the interwebs. Is there any truth to Bohannan playing running back?
No, I've heard that come up, and it had crossed my mind, and I don't know. I suppose it's possible, but I think with his injury history, and maybe he says, hey, I just want to get out there and play. I wouldn't be surprised if, they have some packages with him that they're saving up for opponents, just like you guys, put him in the Wildcat, no pun intended, but pull him out there for you guys. And that's possible, but putting him in as a true running back, maybe, but I don't know. That doesn't really seem like Sitake's style, but honestly, he's probably better than some of the running backs we've got there. We've got a couple of young guys who looked very impressive so far. So we'd like to see if like Sione Moa and then Pokai Haonga, hopefully I got those.
Kudos to you for that.
But they're actually not as hard as you think when you read it and break it down phonetically. But anyway, so yeah, they showed some promise, and maybe we just stick with the young guys and stick them out there. But I don't know. There could be, but I'm not as close to it, to know for sure if that's in the game plan. But if so, they'll probably wait till an opportune moment to bust it out and surprise you guys.
I just have to share this real quick. So Jerry, however you say his first name, Bohannan, when he was at Baylor, they played at K-State in 2019 in a 31-12 victory. And he was 1 for 1 for 38 yards passing, with a passer rating of 419.2.
That's the game that he ripped his hamstring. He
Yeah,
literally tore his hamstring off the bone, and that was the game where Blake Chafin emerged, and we thought we had a chance. And
no. So that was 2020. That was 2021. Because 2019 he played the game before and the game after.
Oh my God.
But
my timeline's all messed up.
He had 3 carries for 1 yard as well in that one. And then in 2021, in that Baylor matchup, they won also 20-10, 9 for 14, 76 yards, 8 for 20, 8 rushes for 20 yards, with a 77.5 QBR and a 133.5 passer rating. So he's had a good success in 2 matchups against K-State. Granted, one of those matchups he had one throw, but just interesting to think about the prospect.
So he played the whole game and had 1 throw?
No, he did not. No, he did not play the whole game. No, that was I don't know who he came in for in that 2019 matchup. I don't remember who the hell Baylor's quarterback was in 2019. It wasn't Blake Shapen.
No. Yeah, well, he was 3 for 3 in garbage time against Wyoming. So, again, that just added fuel to the fire for all the Gary Bohannan guys. But yeah, 2021 BYU, we actually played at Baylor that year.
That's right.
That was their Sugar Bowl year, right? And
yes.
The score wasn't like terrible, but the game wasn't as close as the score suggested. Like it wasn't too great, but we got revenge on the next year. So, but no Bohannan there. So. We did beat Bohannan when he was at USF. We played him at the game opener, the season opener down there in Florida. So we beat him then. And we also beat Keaton Slovis, our QB last year when he was at USC. So there's something to it about finding guys that we've beaten before and bringing them into the fold.
It's almost like familiarity with the program bodes well for the transfer portal, because there have been some guys we've gotten from like North Dakota State as an example, carryovers from the Kleiman teams. Real quick though, I do want to just chat about the rushing game for BYU. So Retzlaff is obviously the number one rusher on the team, but you've got three guys behind him that are two guys behind him that are no slouches as well. You've got LJ Martin with 87 yards on 18 carries. You've also got Hinckley Ropati with 89 yards on 21 carries. And you do have a third guy who's Miles Davis with 76 yards on 16 carries. Fairly balanced rushing attack outside of just the QB run game that we've already talked about. So not only do you have a QB with good rushing ability, but you also have three guys behind him that seem to be fairly even statistically. I guess when you think about this running back room, should K-State plan for all three of these guys as well as Retzlaff? Should they just plan for should they plan for Jake? I guess what should K-State be doing to prepare for the rushing game?
I doubt we see LJ Martin or Hinckley Ropati coming. Those are the two guys that were injured. LJ Martin is legit. People are really excited. He came in as a true freshman last year and really kind of carried the load for the team. He's more of a traditional, put his head down and the way his vision, he can just see. I've heard some things, and I'm not knowledgeable enough to see these myself, but that with our offensive line and some of the blocking schemes we have can sometimes be a little more complex, but the way he can see holes and go for it is great. But I don't think he'll be in the game. Hinckley Ropati is converted running back. So is Miles Davis. Ropati's big dude. He's stout, but he doesn't have the vision. But like I said, he probably won't be in. Miles Davis, he was he started last against Wyoming. And yeah, just running it between the tackles is not his game. Where he's best is on the edges. If you can do a pitch out to him, fly sweep something, and get him out on the edges, he is dangerous. He's fast, and I expect we'll see him used that way this week. But we'll see who starts the game and kind of takes the load of the brunt of the load, kind of going up the gut. And my guess is based on what we saw last week, it would be one of these freshmen who they were planning on redshirting, but that's out the window now. So it seems to be Haonga is kind of the guy that I think fans would like to see. I don't know what the coaching staff will do.
Okay, well, right before we get the defense, it'd be crazy not to talk wide receivers real quick. Obviously, I would think the best player that you guys have is what's his name, Chase Roberts. He's an absolute stud. I mean, break down this wide receiver unit real quick, because I think that's where we're, like you said, they're going to be airing the ball out a little bit. And I think that's, we saw with Tulane that we are susceptible to the pass every once in a while. So break down these wide receivers for me.
I mean, they're good. I mean, they do say that, this is our deepest wide receiver room that they've had. And that's including when we had Puka Nacua. Maybe the total of all the talent wouldn't amount to the same just because Puka was that good, but it certainly, I think you got lots of different guys you could turn to. So yeah, Chase Roberts is I think the first guy on there. Just after him is Darius Lassiter. Now we saw some frustration from him. His brother plays for Kansas. So we saw some frustration from him in the last game that he, it looked like he was getting a bit upset, but ultimately ended up with a touchdown grab. So he just wasn't connecting. I don't know if it's, if they're just targeting in on him or what the situation was, or if it's just the chemistry between Chase and Jake is a little bit better. But he's certainly right there with Chase as well. And then we've got lots of depth. We've got some younger guys that have a lot of speed, Parker Kingston, Keelan Marion, and our slot receiver, Cody Epps. He struggled a little bit this year, but did have a touchdown catch this last week. So again, I could go on and on. One thing when I talk about, we talked about the QB battle, and when they've released that first depth chart after camp, and there was oars all over. I can't remember. It was like 30 oars or something like that on every position. A lot of it wide receiver too. Now, I think they've played a lot of guys, and we'll see this too on defense when we switch over, but they've played a lot of different guys, a lot of different receivers. I imagine once we start getting into, Big 12 play this week, that we might see those lineups tighten up a little bit and see, a few of these other guys. But yeah, certainly there's a lot of speed and a lot of ability there, and young guys that can come in and make plays too, and if we need them. So we feel really bullish on it, and that's why fans who have been calling for, let's pass, we need to pass more, quit trying to establish the run. It's not happening, just like Mean Girls, quit trying to make fetch happen, and you just got to pass it. And it seemed to work this last week. So
yeah, let's get in the car, losers. We're going shopping, baby. I can do Mean Girl references all day. But we're switching over to defense right now. And, this is probably the most solid unit out of the two. The defense, you guys are kind of leaning on that. They say they're ranked 61st out of 133 teams overall on team defense, but I don't believe that for a second. I think this is probably a top 25 defense in the country. You guys are big. You guys are strong. But schematically, what are we looking at? Are we looking at like a 3 down? Because that's kind of what we were used to in the Big 12. What are we looking at schematically for the BYU Cougs?
Honestly, I'm not sure what they'll throw at you, because Jay Hill, he is just a defensive expert, where BYU fans love him. And if anything ever happens to Satake, he is number one on probably just about any BYU fans list to replace him. He's just stellar. And this is only year 2 of him coming in and really reshaping this defense. And we have a lot of the same guys, but they've also hired new training staffs and getting these guys really in shape and bulked up. And so everyone's bigger, they're stronger, but also faster. And so we're just seeing, a lot of improvement across the board on defense, where I think last year we had maybe 11 sacks on the season, and I can't remember what we're at now, 5 or 6, I think, for the season already through 3 games. And so just our ability to get to the quarterback, put pressure on him. Again, you have to look at the level of competition, but SMU is a solid team. And so, yeah, we're really excited about what this defense brings. They've yet to allow a touchdown through the air. So that's something we'd like to see continue into this week. I think that's less likely that'll hold through this weekend. But if it does, that's amazing. But yeah, so in terms of schematically, though, he likes to mix things up and show a lot of different looks and change it up. And I know that Wyoming, or I'm trying to remember now. Yeah, Wyoming, I think based on what they saw against SMU, had prepared completely differently for what they saw. And Wyoming, I don't think we did anything terribly crazy. I think we played them a lot straight up, a little bit more because I think we felt like we had the personnel to do it. But yeah, he definitely likes to continue to throw different looks and confuse people and bring different kinds of pressure. So what we'll see this week, I don't know, but I'm excited to see it.
The no touchdowns through the air is a fascinating thing for me. Does not necessarily bode well for K-State getting their first wide receiver touchdown in the end zone so far this season, because we've got 6 touchdowns receiving, but all of them have been to tight ends or running backs so far.
Interesting. I didn't know that.
So we'll see there. I think that's going to be an interesting thing to see play out. I guess getting into more position group by position group, looking at the defensive line, Tyler Batty's the guy whose name really stood out to me from the defensive line group. He currently leads that group in tackles with 11. He's got 1 pass deflection. Then you've got a guy, Isaiah Banya, John Nelson, and Blake Mangelson. They all have 1 sack apiece for those 3 guys. I guess just tell me about the D line group and which of those guys do you think is going to pose the biggest threat to wreak some havoc on K-State's offense this week?
Out of those guys, man,
or anyone on the D line, if it's not just those guys.
Well, yeah, no, I mean Tyler Batty for sure. He's the captain. He is the leader. He decided to come back for one more season, and and he's from all accounts put in the work to make it happen. And I think the nice thing too is where his numbers weren't necessarily eye-popping. Like he had good numbers last year, but they weren't necessarily eye-popping. But this year it seems like he has more help. And some of these guys, are the same. You mentioned John Nelson and Banya, these guys who were there last year, but it seems like everybody has stepped up. And I don't know if it's the scheme or just everyone's playing better, but which I think is freeing up Batty to do his thing. And so that's, I mean, out of anybody on that defensive line, that's who I would keep my eye on there.
Well, we'll switch over to linebackers real quick, and you can't go with out talking about Jack Kelly for the linebacker unit. I was listening to a BYU podcast, maybe it was Locked On Cougs.
Mm-hmm.
He said that Mel Kiepler has him as the top 5 outside linebacker for this NFL draft. He transferred in from Weber State. And he's taken to BYU like fish in water. So explain to me what we're going to see from the linebacker unit. Is this guy going to be able to run down Avery Johnson?
Weber State, by the way, real quick, another purple Wildcats, which I saw a graphic today, which posted like 5 or something different besides K-State. Purple.
That's just
Wildcats.
hateful. That's just hate.
So,
just pure hate.
You're right there with like Northwestern and like Northern
Abilene
Iowa.
Christian. Abilene
Christian.
Texas, that's the worst enemy right now.
Yeah. Okay. So anyway, I was listening to your question. So Jack Kelly, he's insane, and I mean, he was a Jay Hill guy because that's where Jay Hill was. He was head coach at Weber State, which is about an hour and a half north of Provo. And he brought in some of his guys last year. Some of them aged, ran out of eligibility, and then brought in Jack Kelly this year. And he's getting comps to Kyle Van Noy all the time, and just his style of play and I think more the impact that he has on the defense. And so far, I've seen it. So when you're watching at home, not slowing down. I don't know about you guys, but me, like it's kind of hard to follow like one specific defender until they've made a play or tackle or whatever. But you just see Jack Kelly with the speed that he's closes in on guys, and so he's just he is everything that they've talked about in the preseason. Sometimes they'll hype guys up, but so far he's lived up to it and more. So we're really excited about him. But additionally, we lost Ben Bywater. He was injured last year. The thought was that he was going to come back this year, and ultimately he just probably wasn't where he wanted to be. And so he, stepped away. And so that left us with Harrison Taggart, who kind of filled in for him last year, and he's filled in great. Like he's been in that middle linebacker role, and he's done really well. And then Isaiah Glasker too. And so I think the three of them, between all three of them, they're just wreaking havoc. And so it's just funny that some of these position groups that we were worried about in the off season have all really stepped up and kind of, quieted any doubts that we've had.
I feel like we go through this exercise every year as K-State fans of what are the question marks going into the season, and it never ends up being a question mark, that specific position group for whatever reason. I do want to talk finally about DBs. So you've already mentioned they haven't given up a touchdown through the air just yet. There are currently 3 guys in the DB group who have at least 1 interception, which includes Evan Johnson, Mark Collins, and Jacob Robinson. What are the strong suits of this DB group that have led to not giving up a touchdown through the air just yet? Is it their speed? Is it their discipline? Is it their athleticism, their length? Just tell me a little bit more about this DB group and why they might be at an advantage when you look at that matchup against a K-State wide receiver group that really only has one guy that's proven that he can be over 100-yard guy so far this season.
Yeah, I mean, we do have, I think, a lot of athletes there. Now, I don't know if necessarily more athletic than the wide receivers that they'd be going up against, against other Big 12 teams. But like Jacob Robinson, he's actually not that tall. He's not that big. And that's the biggest knock against him. But I would say the way these guys play is just they're smart. And I think they're well coached. They know where to be and they know where to go. And these interceptions, like these were not gimmies. Like Jacob Robinson, I can't remember now. He had several interceptions last year. And a lot of them, you go back and watch him, like he is going up and getting them. These aren't the ones that, fall into your lap every time. I know he did get some of those too, but which again is positioning. But so there is the athleticism and they're able to hang with just about anybody. And that's even without one of our, projected starters who has a ton of speed. He's been injured. That was Maury Bamba. And so I think it really does come down to just like tenacity with these guys and just that mindset, which is just even further exacerbated by the intensity that Jay Hill brings. I mentioned had a heart attack and 2 days later he was up in the box, and these guys play with that kind of grit. And so I would say, I don't know, I think that's maybe their strength there.
You're using a lot of good words right there. A lot of grit, a lot of tenacity, a lot of fight. Zooming out, it's a matchup, Wildcats versus Cougars. What are some of the things that BYU, summing up all the stuff that you ran down from the offense and defense, give me some of the keys to victory for what BYU is going to need to do versus Kansas State at home?
Well, let's start offensively. It would be obviously don't turn it over. And I think if we can get some of those big chunk plays, which I think BYU will get some, but if we can do that without turning it over and then establish any kind of run game, I think that'll allow our offense to move. I think the big thing that BYU fans are concerned about is that we've seen a lot of very poor conversion on third down. Now we have a very high conversion on fourth down. So a lot of those third downs are probably, hey, we're third and long. We're in the area where we're going to go for it. So let's just pick up some of those yards, play conservatively and make it a more manageable fourth down. And so it is skewed a little bit, but why are you in that third and long in the first place? So we find ourselves getting in a lot of third and long situations. So I think to avoid that, and so if we can avoid that and keep the offense, on the field, get some more sustained drives in there, I feel confident in this team. And even if we have to settle for some field goals, we feel good about our kicker. I think it's going to take all of that just to hang with K-State in terms of on the offensive end. On the defensive side, it is all about containing the quarterback. That is the one weakness and that we've seen with this defense. And it's weird to say it's like not like the biggest weakness. It's really like the one weakness that we have is the quarterbacks and really containing mobile quarterbacks of any kind, or even quarterbacks that aren't super mobile can look relatively mobile. It feels like, at least, going back to last year. So, I mean, we've still done a pretty good job containing him, but going up against, a higher caliber of quarterback, which, if BYU wins, maybe he'll transfer to BYU eventually too. Probably not, but it is a trend. So I think that's a big thing is if we can continue to keep pressure on the quarterback, but keep them contained, obviously, and limit the run game in that regard, the QB run game. I think it really puts our defense in good position to help BYU hang. And I think this defense is good enough that if playing well, it can keep BYU in games where we're the underdog.
I love it. And real quick, I was just doing some research on the all-time history between K-State and BYU. Fun fact, this series goes back to 1957, and K-State and BYU are currently tied with 4 wins apiece in the matchup. So it's 4-4 all-time. Yep. BYU's on a 2-game win streak going back to 1977.
So read into it what you will. Yeah,
that was the last regular season matchup. That was September 10th of 1977. So almost, that's what, 57 years later. We are, or 47 years later, playing in the next regular season matchup. What is your final score prediction for this in the 9th installment of Cougs versus Cats?
Okay. So this year, I was on game week 1 and 3, I was actually eerily close on both predictions. Sorry. Game 2, I was wildly off. So I'm hoping, at this even week, I might be way off on this. But like I said, I think BYU is good enough, or the defense is good enough to keep BYU hanging in this game. And so even though we're underdogs before the season, I picked K-State to win this. I am going to go with the Cougars, and I'm going to say this is going to be a close one. And if BYU is going to win this, it has to be with the defense keeping the team in the game. So I'm going to say like 24-21, somewhere in that area. If I had, I'll go with that. 24-21, a close one. And BYU pulls it out at home under the lights.
Yeah.
This crowd gets wild. I mentioned that Baylor game earlier when they came to Provo. You have to go back and watch, or the Utah game. We just found out the night before that we got into the Big 12. We had Utah at home. We won. It was going crazy. I'm hoping we can bring that kind of intensity to this game, because if so, I think that will help give BYU the edge.
LES, baby. LES. Right. Let's go. I like it.
All right.
Chef, what's yours?
I got the Cats 31-20. I honestly think their defense is really good. I think we're on a streak of non-offensive touchdowns. We're at 3 in a row right now. I think we can get to the quarterback and, make him turn over the ball, and we might be able to get a defensive score. But I think they're going to be able to get to the red zone. I think we might be able to hold them out. 2 field goals, 2 touchdowns for BYU, and the score's 31-20 Cats. Let's go.
And I'm going to go 27-21 Cats. I'm keeping it close on the spread there, which is right around 6.5 right now. And the over-under is right around 48.5, 49.5. So I'm just slightly under on that one. And the thing that scares me about this game is a night game in Provo, which Trevor, I don't know if you know the record off the top of your head, but isn't it like 26-6 in night games in Provo since like 2019?
Yeah, it's ridiculous. I was looking at one earlier today, but it had all night games in it. So I'm trying to remember just Provo. It's really good. Of course, we kind of let off near the end last year, and we lost to Iowa State embarrassingly in one of those. But
we know what that's all about.
Yeah. Don't be too embarrassed. I mean, we let them run around at the nighttime too in a foot of snow. So
there was no snow at least, but it's it is really high. We call them the Vampire Cougs, and they come out at night to play, and it's just something about the energy there in the stadium. And I don't know, it'll be an experience. I think no matter what, I think it'll be a great game, and I'm really excited. I've got to say, also keep in mind that Andy Reid will be rooting for BYU. So just a little tidbit.
That's very true. That's very true.
You can't be mad at Reid.
I love Andy Reid, but I'm not going to be wearing my T-shirt with his face on it tomorrow.
Well, I could be mad at Andy Reid if he doesn't get his play calling together. If he letting Cincinnati keep doing that to us, and almost win, and we have to squeak out hire the refs to do that.
Nobody feels bad for you in the world, so I don't care.
Not at all. Not at all. Well, that is going to do it for us tonight. Trevor, once again, thanks a ton for coming on to preview the Cougars this weekend. Let the Cokeheads, our followers, know where they can find you, and we'll give you the final word to plug your pod and anything else that you want to plug.
Yeah, so that's my Twitter handle right there, Sats Warrior BYU. On YouTube, it's actually at Saturdays Warrior BYU, the whole thing out. So should have had better coordination there. But I'm go check me out on Twitter. I've got a link to my YouTube, or you can go find me on YouTube. Post there regularly, especially right now during the season, and going live late on Saturdays because BYU is pretty late, and we go on after kind of recap the game and go across the Big 12. So join us there for a little segment I'm calling Saturdays Night Live. So join me for that. And that's the handle right there. So come do that, like, subscribe, and do all that. So
do all the things. And once again, we want to shout out our sponsors, Pat's Beef Jerky and Annie Mae's Parlor. Remember to visit patsbeefjerky.com and use the promo code CATS for 10% off your next order. or the promo code USA for free shipping on orders over $100. Additionally, we are the K-State representative, and Trevor is the BYU representative on the College Huddle, which is the largest community of fan-driven content in the nation. So be sure to check them out and the work that we're all doing over there at thecollegehuddle.com and follow them on social media at College Huddle. Last but not least, you can follow our show at Cocaine Willie on YouTube, TikTok, Twitter, or Instagram, or you can follow us individually. I'm at Bob Trollsby. Chef is at Chef Andre Napier. Fireball Matt is at Matt Marchesini, and Trevor is at Sats Warrior BYU. Chef.
4 for you, Glenn Coco. Cocaine's a hell of a drug, baby.
We are all coke and no joke. Wildcat Country.
Let's ride.
Let's ride.